Well, hello and welcome to Higher Education, the podcast that explores career development in public education. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Sergo, and in each episode, we explore different aspects of career development, interview experts, and of course, share practical advice. So today we're going to be talking about leading from where you are. So let's level up our skills. Leadership is not confined to corner offices, main office, or central offices. Leadership is a really dynamic force that can sort of emerge from any corner of our lives, no matter what your role is. So, whether you're a student, an individual who's just starting out in your career, or you're an experienced professional, sort of navigating what leadership looks like in the workplace is something that we certainly can all identify with. And it's easy to feel like leader is only this term that's applied by certain job titles, but really it's more than just being a boss or supervisor. The truth is, we can all lead from where we are. Doesn't really matter what our role is. And I've met plenty of leaders that had a title that no one followed. And I've also met plenty of people who did not have a title and everyone followed them without fail. So I want to dive into our conversation today about how we can redefine this idea of leadership and making a difference right where you are. And to guide us through this conversation, I'm excited to bring forward two outstanding leaders in their own right. Welcome Miss Liz Matheny and Tracy Hilliard to the podcast. So first, let's welcome Liz. Liz is one of our talented curriculum specialists in the Curriculum Instruction and Innovation Department here in Frederick County Public Schools. Liz joined Frederick County in 2017 as a high school English teacher. And from there, she worked her way up to teacher specialist and then a curriculum specialist. So Liz has a phenomenal experience leading in and out of the classroom. We're also excited to welcome Tracy Hilliard today. Tracy is one of our outstanding elementary school principals, is currently leading Urbana Elementary School. And similar to Liz, Tracy also started her career out as a teacher. She worked her way up to school administration and has nearly 25 years of experience as both an assistant principal and a principal at various schools throughout Frederick County. She comes to the show today with a wealth of experience, not only locally, but also at the state and national level. So before we dive into our topic, I want to give our guests a chance to introduce themselves, to unlock their fast facts about their leadership journey and how they know that this is such an important skill to develop throughout your career. So Liz, can you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me today. I feel like I've been in many different roles that have taken the shape of a leader over the course of my entire life, to be honest. As a precocious little girl who really wanted to be a leader in the classroom as a student, to being a student government leader in high school, as well as in college, I was the vice president of the fishing club at Salisbury University, where I did not do a lot of fishing, but I did do a lot of organizing of people. And I feel like one of the leadership lessons I've learned over time is that if the work or decisions you make impact anyone else, you're in a leadership position. And that has really framed me considering how to lead from where I am. Because to me, leading from where you are is really about connection and collaboration and building bridges between people and opportunities. And so that's what really carries me through are those life experiences that then led me to being a high school English teacher. I've been in the role as department chair as well as SIP chair. And that really led me on my administrative journey over time.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Now I'm going to have to look up the fishing club, but it's sort of a great segue into our conversation today and the idea that it's not just sort of obvious places where you find leadership in every space. It matters. So thank you for sharing that background. We're very lucky to have you here, sort of leading from where you are. So now we're going to shift over to Tracy. Tracy, what about you? Will you unlock your fast facts and share a little bit about yourself with our audience?
Wow, I have a lot in common with Liz. We don't know each other, but it's great that we can both say that we wanted to be teachers. We both started in those leadership roles when we were in high school, student councils, working on senior class, working with those types of things as well. And then moving on to college to become part of Women's Senate while I was in college as well. Also a fun fact that you may not know, I was in the second runner-up for Miss Delaware State University when I was there as a student. A fun fact, my daughter is now a sophomore at Delaware State University. So she's following me there, but not in education. She chose something different. But some of the same things that Liz talked about was just leading everywhere. As a classroom teacher here in Frederick, I served on the leadership team. I was a team leader. Many committees and different things that Frederick County had to offer. I made sure I was there being a part of those things. Serving outside of Frederick County, I work with the National Association of Elementary School Principals and the Maryland Association of Elementary School Principals, where I serve as the president. So again, being that leader and being able to share what it takes to be a leader, and that title was helping me to work within our leadership with both of those organizations, but also to bring them back home to Frederick County. So it wasn't about just being that leader, but being a person on a committee and working with others. So leadership, it can be challenging, but we all have a role in making sure it's successful for all of us. So that's just a little bit about me.
Well, that's wonderful. And I also have the student government background. So I don't know if you're listening to this, get involved in student government. And I think the rest is history. So I appreciate that we all have that in common. So let's go into our first topic. And thank you both as you've introduced yourselves. But it sort of is builds off of what you shared, which is that leadership really isn't a title, it's a behavior. And many people have this perception that you're a leader in your organization when you get a certain job title. And this is a pretty widespread sort of phenomenon, but it sort of reminds me, particularly for those of us who are in education, we work with kids. And, I know I've come across kids where they're pretty precocious, to use Liz's word, and it's like, oh my gosh, you meet a 6-year-old and you're like, this kid's going to run something someday. This is going to be a CEO, because what you're commenting on is that you really sort of see that inherent leadership within them. There's this ability that they possess to use their talents to sort of guide and influence others, hopefully in good ways, but in any way that sort of they're a person that other people follow. And so, personality matters. There's lots of really interesting research on this idea of charisma, because a lot of people think, oh, a leader is charismatic, but really leaders are people who study and practice these routines and these procedures that sort of guide and move others. So it doesn't really matter whether you have a title. It's this idea of how you practice these leadership behaviors. So we really want our audience, don't limit your thinking about leadership to your title. You aren't thinking big enough, and you have a lot of opportunity from where you are. So for this first question, I want each of you to think about someone who may not have had a job title that suggested leader, but you found possessed the traits and skills that really demonstrated leadership behavior. So what were the behaviors that they demonstrated, and how did their leadership show up? And Tracy, I'd love to start with you this time.
I would say I call them those undiscovered leaders. They possess many qualities that set them apart from others. And just as you said, that 6-year-old, and you say to yourself, he's going to be president one day, or he's going to be an engineer. And that's the same when we're looking at our staff within our schools. I have many staff members that they just pop up and they don't even see the qualities that they have, that they can certainly be those leaders in the building. And they already have that, what I call undefined leadership, where people go to them because they see their leadership. But they also possess those qualities that set them apart. They're curious. They're always asking those questions when we're at leadership meetings, or when we're just, Tracy, you got 2 minutes. Hey, I want to ask you about this. They're not the ones that conform. They don't always conform to what everybody else thinks. That's a great idea. They go, that is a great idea, but I would love to share this with you as well. They look at challenges as, this is great, I'm going to take this on. What could we do to make this more profitable, or make it something that could help everybody at our school? Collaboration is a thing that they look at. They're always about, I can work with this team and we can work on this to get some consensus building throughout our school. Or the resilience, they may get shot down. Someone may go, why is she throwing that out there again? But they continue and they say, there's more determination, and I'm going to face those challenges and setbacks that others might see. But they're very curious. They're problem solvers. They're always thinking, what's the next step? And they're coming to you with solutions, not just problems. And those are those people that I go, ooh, Tina would be good at that. I think that's someone that I would like to work with us and lead that committee. So it's those people that have that natural curiosity, and that probing question to make you think at times, what else should we be doing? So that's how I see them, as those I always call them challenge setters, but also they're problem solution oriented as well.
Well, and it reminds me of this topic of professional irreverence, which we're going to get to a little bit later today. But a lot of what you said I connected with. Liz, what about you? What are some thoughts around the behaviors that you've seen in people who maybe didn't have leadership as a title, but their leadership showed up as influential?
Yeah, similar to Tracy, I think to me, the underscore is that they have a continual pursuit of better, right? They're looking for opportunities. They're looking to think about what exists, but what needs to exist, and really thinking about the customer experience, be it students. We have many teachers who are the leader of their classrooms. They're collaborating with co-teachers or their teams. And so always thinking about what do we have, but what can I do to make it better or more user-friendly? And that level up mentality. I also think, just like Tracy said, they come in with solutions, or they're thinking creatively or dynamically, and they're reflective. So often leadership is just listening and reflecting on what was said and giving yourself time and space to think about what is the next step here for this body of work or this group of people, and what's our end goal. And so I think that level of focus comes in natural leaders. Sometimes they don't have all of the pieces all together, right? But they have this starting point because they know it can be better, and they know that people deserve, a good experience in their work.
Well, and I think what you both said sort of is a great transition to this idea of how behaviors can become your style, right? And your approach. And so I think what's really important is that when you think about this idea of leadership style, really all that does is it sort of clusters different sets of traits or behaviors together and labels them. So even if you aren't in a formal leadership role, we all have a style or a preference of how all of our little behaviors sort of come together and how people experience this. And if you're thinking about your leadership style, you could of course do one of the many assessments that are out there that will sort of give you a label and put you in a little box. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, leadership style is really about two things: the traits that you possess, sort of what you come with inherently, and then this sort of primary approach or the default approach you lean on when you're working with others. So there's a lot of different styles in the research. People have heard about transactional, transformational, authoritarian, all kinds of things, laissez-faire. But the reality is there isn't a best style. The truth is, I think whatever's most authentic to who you are and something that cultivates on the strengths that you have is the best style for you. So we know that leaders have to be nimble. They have to adapt to the circumstances they're in. You have to match your style to the context. But love to hear a little bit more from you about how you might describe your particular style and what are the key traits that you lean into, even if you're not maybe the leader in the room that you're in. So why don't we start with you this time, Liz?
So, I think a common perception is that we all try to lead by example, right? We want to practice what we hope others do, and how they frame their thinking, make decisions, etc. But I think a core element of that for me is just meeting people where they are. That might be sitting side by side with students when I visit classrooms and listening to their experience. It might also be pulling up a chair to a team meeting for teachers and listening to the conversation and thinking about, where is this team, and what can I do to provide them support to get to the next level, and really try to be as collaborative as possible. In my English language arts world, we have a lot of stakeholders from different departments in central office, in buildings, etc., and really trying to listen and make connections, like I had said earlier, across the departments, because it can often feel like we're very siloed, but really make sure that we're working all of our wheels in the same direction.
Thank you for sharing that. Tracy, what about you? How would you describe your leadership style, or what are the key traits that you lean into?
I think, as you said, we have to be flexible and adaptive in our approach to leadership. I think many of us as school leaders or leaders in general, we see ourselves as servant leaders. But I feel that if we don't mesh them all together, we're going to be a leader that's not making progress. One type of leadership can't say, this is who Tracy Hilliard is. I think having them all together and being able to use them when the need arises. But I would say, as we reflect on our leadership, I think about, I want to be supportive and empower everyone. That not only goes through my school life, but also in my personal life, where I serve in many organizations where I'm not necessarily the leader, but I'm also there to be supportive and empower others to meet their goals. And I think it fits me well to kind of talk about that within our school system as well, and our organization, that I am that servant leader there as well, where I'm there to help. I can lead from behind. When we have meetings at school, I don't have to be in front. A lot of our teachers that are new, when they start to meet me, they go, "You didn't lead the meeting." Well, I work with the chair who was leading that meeting. She was there. We went over her agenda. We went over the things that they were sharing. I'm a part of that planning, but I don't always have to be that voice. I can certainly be that voice to that leader to help them, but also those sharing that leadership with everyone and having them be a part of that. We can build a stronger, more effective school community, and especially if we're inviting our community in as well, because their voice has to be heard. And if it's always my voice, then it's not always going to help us foster the collaboration that we want to, or have that mutual respect. And if we're all here to serve, all of our voices are important. So we all have to be a part of that leadership, and we all have to be a part of the growth for everyone. And I would say that's truly who I am. And as Liz said as well, we have to be there to support, pulling those chairs up, having those conversations to help support them. And I think those are the key traits that will help us all formalize that role as a leader within our school system.
Thank you. And I think you both talked about sort of how you've evolved in your thinking, even about those traits, and how you really look at customizing them based on the circumstances that you're in, which is another key habit. So let's dive into that idea of leadership habits just a bit more purposefully. Whether you're in a formal leadership title or not, there are typically a set of key habits that will support your success. This includes some of the things you all have mentioned, like offering to help, looking for places to contribute, just having a positive approach to problem solving, right? Coming with ideas and solutions, and just figuring out, how can I contribute? How can I advance the work of the school or the organization or the office forward? So I'd love to get your thoughts on the top 1 or 2 habits that you really would want to cultivate or see in people that you're working with, that, you say, these are the things that if someone is leading from where they are, these are the habits that we would see evident in their work. So Liz, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Tracy.
Sure. So, I think about this because to be limited to 1 or 2 is not easy. And so I think a lot about this idea of productive curiosity, right? So leaders, I think, ask questions and they phrase them like, "I wonder about," or "I'm curious about," because they may not have the answers fleshed out, but they are naturally curious about what the next steps are or what the potential is in a certain idea. And they're really crowdsourcing input in the expertise of those around them. And that collaborative nature, I think, can really drive leadership pretty far.
Well, and I think this idea of, I love what you said about curiosity, right? Which is, it sort of reminds me also of being willing to change your mind, right? That if you're asking a lot of questions, you're getting more information that may change your thinking about something. And so to me, curiosity and questioning also helps with flexible thinking, which is another really important habit. Tracy, what would you like to offer? What would you share from your perspective about the top 1 or 2 habits that you'd want to cultivate or see demonstrated in others?
And Liz, I would go along with you too, that collaborative mindset. I think we look for those individuals that it's just natural for them. There's those natural collaborators, and usually that's who we look for, because they're all about, let me see what others are thinking and how could I ingrain what they're saying into what my thoughts are, so we can have an effective team environment. And then they come to you with these wonderful, wonderful outputs of things to try within our school to help advance all of us, not just a small group of us. So that collaboration is very, very, very important. And I think resilience, because sometimes those leaders, they're those people that are always going around and they can bounce back when there's a setback because they had this whole thing worked out. They're ready to share it with the whole staff, but they feel it's not going anywhere. but they're like, you know what, it's a failure, but I'm going to learn from that. What can I learn from this? And then I can keep my positive attitude because I want others to see, even in challenging situations, I can persevere and I'm going to continue to work. So I think collaboration and resilience are two things that we would look for and suggest to them to continue to do on a daily basis.
Right, and that's such a nice segue to sort of go forward about this idea of asking questions and offering different ideas. Another behavior that I've talked a lot about recently is the notion of something called I call being professionally irreverent. And so this is a term that I coined years ago, maybe to describe myself partly, but it's sort of the sweet spot between being direct and disagreeable and being clear and inquisitive. And so, like, to me, when I think about what does it mean to be professionally irreverent, it's this act of actively working against just going along or succumbing to groupthink or suppressing your ideas or your inquisitiveness. And so sometimes I think we are, we end up being in a little bit of an echo chamber sometimes in public education specifically, and we assume everyone has the same ideas or always agrees with us. And so the idea of being professionally irreverent, it really includes four key components. Respectful disruption. I just love the imagery of that, right? Like, not, I'm gonna challenge us to maybe think differently here. Diplomacy, right? Tact and timing matter. Innovation and intention, right? So I loved, Trace talked about, like, you're trying to make it better. That's your intent. And so ultimately, the goal of being professionally irreverent is to contribute positively to the work environment. Can we do this better? Can we do this faster? Can we do this with more impact? It's not about being disruptive for the sake of just questioning things or bringing a negative energy. It's just bringing like some, playfulness, if you will, to challenging people to think deliberately about their work. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this idea of professional irreverence, and how do you sort of see this in action? How might you describe this? What does this look like for you? And I'll start with you, Liz, and then go to Tracy.
So I think, to me, the most productive form of professionally irreverence is really when it comes from a place of care and growth, right? Because in order for us to have those conversations and for them to be well received, people need to know that we really care about each other and the work. But we are consistently trying to find ways to level up or to streamline or clarify in our understanding of systems and processes to make it more user-friendly. I think that the folks who do this best are often the ones who really sit back in the conversation at first and they listen and they see the through line and they say, well, what about, and then they bring in all of the pieces of the conversation to show people how they gel together.
Right. And so that sort of, I always say, like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And so someone who's professionally irreverent can sort of does that well, right? They can see what the problem is and they can make those contributions in ways that sort of summarize and synthesize. Those are great, great ideas. Tracy, what about you? What are your thoughts on this topic and this idea?
This topic and the idea that you talked about right away, what hit me, it's funny, the respectful disruption. It hit me as a leader, but also to look for those staff members in our building. And I think of John Lewis when he talks about causing good trouble. That's kind of how I read that respectful disruption. I think it's those teachers that are there causing good, where some may think, oh, they're just causing trouble, but they're causing good trouble to make us think about our practices, think about how collaboration is going in our building. What are our norms in our building? Do they need to be changed? Do we need to update? What is our environment, learning environment at our school? How is it respecting everybody within our building, not just our students, but also our staff and our parents and visitors that come to our building? And I think from that respectful disruption, it will come from, it helps us prompt those positive changes, innovation and growth within our building, and it helps us grow as a professional, and it helps us build collaboration. But I think as a leader within a building, that respectful disruption, I think at times when we think about those decisions we have to make within our building to support that academic growth of every scholar or every student in our building, to make sure that we're engaging in that respectful disruption, to make sure all are growing and that our teachers are building their capacity. But am I building my capacity as a leader as well? So I think from all of it, the respectful disruption is what I'm looking for within our building, to have everybody to have that respectful disruption. But also I'm thinking about me. Tracy, what do you need to do to grow as well and build your capacity using that same type of information as well?
Well, and I love this, what you described as this idea of we all have to have tolerance
Mhm.
for things being messy a little bit, right? And so we like things, educators, we tend to like things to be pretty neat and tied up and organized. And sometimes decision making isn't really like that. And so just making sure that as leaders, we set the tone for like, okay, that's interesting, right? Doesn't mean we have to do the new idea or stop something, but how do we create a space for that? And I appreciate you both sharing. We're getting close to the end of our time, but I want to make sure we get to our listener question of the week. And for this question, this person shared that they are interested in leading more from where they are, but they're not really interested in applying for a promotion or a quote formal leadership title. So their question is, how can I demonstrate, I think it's inferred to their supervisor or their boss, that I'm interested in leading more without changing jobs? Tracy, what are your thoughts on this?
I think as we think about cultivating those leaders within our building, whether they're identified or not identified, I think everyone should know that leadership is not a job title. I think it's more of that authority on what you do with your actions and behaviors within the building, that you are that leader, whether you want to be. People will put you on that pedestal when they see that growth and your influence that you have on them, because we all want to reach those common goals and they see you as a person leading. So I would say, even if they don't want to have that job title, they should continue to support their own growth and development by offering guidance, being a mentor, encouragement, serving on committees. They already have that trust and credibility because staff loves to talk to them, come to them, have that great rapport, and offering support. And I think a big one that we don't think about a lot is empathy. When teachers are struggling, you're that voice of reason and providing that empathy to help them. And then also take the initiative, propose new ideas. You don't have to be a leader to say, hey, what about this? Can we try this? You don't have to be a leader to solve problems. You're a problem solver all day in your classroom, and you can also do that to help our teachers, other teachers in the building, improve our processes within our building. And if anything that falls outside of their formal responsibility, they are a leader, whether they want that title, but they don't have to take that title, but they continue with those other responsibilities outside of their formal responsibilities in the classroom.
That's great advice about it's really how you execute the job you have, right? That you can lead from that job and demonstrate that. Liz, what would you add to what Tracy shared?
So similarly, I think that we have to reframe the perspective a little bit. Everything we do is an opportunity to grow, reflect, and lead, right? So I think that a starting point for a lot of professionals early in their career, or even when they get this little buzz or like shot of adrenaline about leadership, it's really finding the thing that energizes you, right? Like, what is the topic that's really interesting or complex that you really want to spend some time thinking about a little bit more? Start there and then find people who energize you about that topic and lean in and listen to them. And I think that once you find the topic, that sort of just propels you into finding other contributing factors and other ways to change or to influence, and really leaning into your people and into the work, both new in the work or experienced in the work, to learn from them. I think one of my greatest experiences was that administrative internship, just having that quality time with my principal at the time to listen and learn about his experience and how he came to the conclusions he did. And I think that teachers can do that as well with their teammates or their co-teachers on a regular basis. So to me, reminding ourselves everything's an opportunity to lead. It could be curriculum writing, team meetings, meetings with families, and just having opportunities that we can then reflect on as far as what could I do a little bit better? Where do I need to sharpen my skills to continue growing?
Thank you both for that wonderful and sage advice. for people who are really looking to either be confirmed in what they're currently doing, or to think about something new. And unfortunately, while we're getting to the end of our show today, I want to make sure I take an opportunity to thank both of you for joining us today and chatting with us about leading from where you are. I know both of you probably never set out to be leaders in formal title, and yet you were led there yourselves by people who saw something in you, who encouraged you and cultivated you. And I know we will all make sure we pass that gift on and do it for others. That wraps up today's episode of Higher Education. And we hope our discussion about leading from where you are is really helps you think it's not really about the destination. It's much more about the journey and how we show up each and every day to do this work. And the stories that were shared today by Tracy and by Liz really underscore the significance of taking every opportunity you're in to contribute, no matter what your title is. So please join us again next time for another insightful episode. This brings us to the last of our higher education podcasts for the 2023-2024 school year. But please make sure to tune back in the fall when we will pick this up again in our commitment to career development and investing in our current and future employees. Until then, keep thriving in your careers and don't forget to share this podcast.